Good morning, art enthusiasts, and welcome into our studio. I'm so glad you could join us this morning because we're going to be starting the veil painting. And in the last video, I showed how to stretch the paper and get it really tight and how to make sure that your tape sticks on, because preparation is everything when it comes to getting a satisfying painting experience. If you'd like to review the video too, where I talk about the supplies, you'll know all the essentials that you need to get started. I'm using lemon yellow today, a cobalt blue, and a carmine red. And we'll start by just dipping the brush into the water. There's water in the saucers of the plates because that's where you actually mix up your value. And you're going to be starting very light to begin with. You may not even be able to see this yellow, but I'm just going to paint it on like this and let this yellow emanate outwards of yellow. It's a nondescript form. It's not a circle or a square or anything like that. Make sure your brush is clean, and then you let this water dribble into the blue plate, that you get a very light colored blue. And I'm going to begin by letting the blue smoothly as I can envelop the yellow. Sort of a holding gesture that will let the blue contain the yellow somewhat on the bottom of the paper. Once you get those two colors on, you're going to have to let it dry. Once you've dried the veils or let them dry on their own, you'll be ready to go on to the next veils. One of the essentials that you want to know about veil painting is that each layer must be dry in between. Otherwise, you won't get that translucent sort of veiling quality. And again, I'm going to start in the center of whatever veil I did before. It could come down towards green, perhaps. And I'm just getting one value darker. But for you, I would suggest that you take a tester paper and make sure that you have the right color. Then begin to allow the paint to move in a different way across the surface of the paper. Next, we're going to do a little red veil. And I've got the red here, so be careful that you don't get too dark too quickly. I want you to be able to see this. Then you look into your composition where you don't have anything yet. And now I'm going to have a space of red appear, and I'm just going to evaluate where I want it to be. This is, again, just color. It's not anything in particular. I am demonstrating the Essenza veil painting technique, which is a lot freer and perhaps less ruled. So now I'm going to allow green to start to arise in this third pass. This is going to be letting yellow move into blue slightly in probably just one place to begin with. And I again will have the blue veil covering something of what I did before. I'm going to avoid anything that's wet because that will create these kind of streaks in the veils. And we're looking for a very quiet surface. This takes a little practice, and you can, if you want, wash your brush, dry it, and then go over the edge of the veil to lighten any surface that you're not quite sure if you want that form to be solid yet. You might be able to see that the red is still wet, so I'm going to have to take my hair dryer for a moment and dry it off, and then I'll be able to show you the next red veil. Red is very much the weakest space that I've done so far, because it's the last one that I added to the composition. So I'm going to begin here in the red, and notice how I'm not going into the space that I've already painted. I never paint back in there, as much as you may want to perhaps smooth and sense how the form is expanding, here coming into yellow, down here coming into blue. And if you want the color to not have a strong form on its outside edges, wash the brush, dry it on the rag, and then wipe over the outside edge to soften. Now over here in yellow, let's look for where we see yellow might be already indicating a sense of where it originates. I'm going to bring this even down here into what was blue, and now we'll be creating green. Now I would like to go on and do the blue, but I have wet spaces in yellow and red. So before I can do that, I need to take a quick drying tool or wait for it to dry. So I'm going to wipe my brush across the pigment, which is dried on the lip of the saucer, and let it dribble into the plate here. Now we're going to have the blue begin to create a veil across the red, and I may even come up here into the yellow, and then see how I dry the brush on the rag and then I soften the edges. This way I get less of a line where the veil ends. Each time you go through the passes of the veils, starting with your yellow perhaps and then going to your blue and red, you need to ask yourself, how do I feel they are balanced and how are they working together? So each time I look, for example, at the red, and I say to myself, how can I break this movement that I did last time but still maintain the shape that I want? Change the form every single time. So if I did a bump up here before, then perhaps this time I'm going to go that way. And this takes a lot of consciousness and practice for you to remember that you're not just repeating the same thing over and over. It's a little bit like a life lesson. We want to learn from our mistakes and not continue with the same things over and over again. Yellow is the color that will get swallowed up the most quickly in your veil painting, so be sure to keep coming back to it and to be equal and unified and not have one of the colors being too much of a loudmouth, and that would usually be red. I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and go to my Patreon and support me there. Thank you.